We have an unidentified flying object.
I'm Jack Oswald, and you're listening.
This is Hudson Hamane, and you're listening to...
I'm Richard C. Hoagland, and you're listening to...
I'm Art Bell, and you're listening to Dr. J Radio Live.
We have an unidentified flying object.
Okay, welcome back to another episode of Dr. J Radio Live. Of course, I'm your host, Dr. J, broadcasting from the City of Angels. As you know, we are internationally syndicated in the U.S. and the U.K. via Late Night in the Midlands, Black Swamp Radio, and Deprogram Radio in the U.K., not to mention the terrestrial stations associated with both those stations, or all three of those stations locally. Now, right now, we are bringing you a guest that you guys have asked to come back and back and back, and now we finally got him. Live from Tel Aviv, Israel, we bring you the one and only Uri Geller. Mr. Geller, welcome back, my friend.
Hey, thank you very much, Dr. J. What a nice introduction. And don't call me Mr., call me Uri. And yes, I'm speaking to you from Israel, from Old Jaffa, which is a lovely, incredible 6,000-year-old, I would call it almost a village. It's an artistic village, meaning most of the people who live in Old Jaffa are artists. They are writers, they are jewelry makers, they are poets, they are actors, they are singers. It's just incredible to live here. The Old Jaffa was a port, a 6,000-year-old port. It has a wall around it. And I'm opening the Uri Geller Museum in about a year's time in Old Jaffa. We'll speak about that a little later, but I'd like to kick off this program by asking you, Dr. J, a question, and let's see if you know the answer. Listen to these names carefully, okay?
Okay.
Jesus Christ,
Yes.
Nostradamus,
Yes.
George W. Bush,
Yes.
Bill Clinton,
Yes.
Jimmy Carter,
Yes.
Colin Powell.
Yes.
I'll continue. John Kennedy, Barack
Yes.
Obama,
Yes.
Barack Obama, Donald Trump.
Yeah.
What's the connection?
Well, it's either presidents or a prophecy, a prophet, Nostradamus, and people literally that had the keys to the world, because some.
Okay, you got it wrong. You got it wrong. The connection is amazing, and I'm sure most of you listeners will light up and say, "Wow, this is incredible," because we are attached to this puzzle. And now I'll tell you the answer. There's no doubt in my mind, Dr. J, that you have in the past, you have spoken about 1111, the powerful number. I call it the cosmic number. My eyes started being attracted to 1111 when I was around 40, 45. And by the way, I will plug my website. It's urigeller.com. I'll repeat that, www.urigeller.com. Uri Geller is Urigeller. And on my homepage, there is a fascinating article which I have written after long research into the 1111 phenomenon. I realized that there are not hundreds of thousands, but probably millions of people around the world that their eyes are attracted to 1111. What that means, they would stand in their kitchen, suddenly they'll turn around, look at the clock on the wall, and it's 1111. In their cars, in their offices, then when they check into hotels, suddenly 1111, something makes you turn around and you look at the clock. So all those names that I just read out, they are made out of 11 letters. This is so bizarre. When Barack Obama was elected, I knew he will become the president because I knew that there are 11 letters. But when Donald Trump was controversially elected, I wrote on my Facebook very clearly, 1 year before he was elected to the President of the United States, that he's going to win. Simply because I basically bet on my own feelings Donald Trump is 11 letters too. So some people will tell you, oh, come on, Uri, come on, Dr. J, this is a coincidence. But I don't believe in coincidences. I believe in synchronicities. Everything in the universe happens for a reason. Anyhow, the reason I started talking about the 1111 phenomenon is that there is no doubt in my mind that you're going to have many, many emails and messages on Facebook to this fact. It's just a fascinating occurrence, and it's mysterious. So do get on my website, urigeller.com, and learn more about it. All right, Dr. J, I had my monologue.
Well, absolutely. Everybody out there, you could click on Uri Geller's link right in the description of his bio on the website, Dr. J Radio Live. But do read that article, because I got to tell you, Uri, 1111, that is the two numbers as opposed to 333 or 1010. 1111 is the one I see the most, like you said, in the car, on a computer, on a smartphone, on the cable box, on any clock. That is the one. So the fact that you were able to predict Donald Trump a year before he actually won predates any poll by several months, several months, even before there was even the Democratic candidate. Well, we know it was going to be Hillary, but even before Donald Trump defeated the other 16 Republicans. So the fact that you had that a year in advance based on all your the synchronicity that you believe in and all your powers, then I definitely, that doesn't surprise me. If it was somebody else that didn't have such a history like you, it wouldn't surprise me. Now, let me. Go ahead.
Dr. J, this is not something psychic. I think that this is something that has been governed by some higher forces that we still don't understand or we still didn't discover. And there are so many numerologists out there who believe in numerology, and they make up certain predictions. I really just predicted it because the name had 11 letters. So I find it so amazing. And when you say that you too, your eyes are attracted to 1111, it's not like you sit next to a clock and it's 1111. But when there is a clock or a watch or whatever behind you, something makes you turn around and look at it. That's that physical movement, the tangible movement of turning around and looking at a clock that is exactly point on 11:11. Go ahead, Dr. J. Ask me whatever you want to. I always, I'm open for any question.
Well, I know, and this is something we touched on last time, but of course we did the stopping of the watch experiment. But I know for 40 plus years or somewhere in that era, late 60s, early 70s, you've been sought out by the Stanford Research Institute, anybody to test what powers you may have, because you have the ability to do things that other people can't. When did you first yourself notice that, hey, I can do something that everybody else should be able to do but doesn't, so something is special or something is more awake in me?
Well, it all started really when I was 5 years old. But let's jump like 15 years into the future in Tel Aviv, Israel, when I was 5 years old. We'll go back to that. But in 1972, you're right, the Mossad, I did some work for Mossad, which probably most of you know, that it's the equivalent to the CIA, even more than that. They were amazed by the information I would bring them. And they didn't have the means at that time, we're talking about 1968, 69, 70, to test the mind, to test me under scientifically controlled conditions. They knew that I'm bringing in positive information that they can use, but they didn't know how. They wanted to know the know-how, which meant they picked up the phone to the CIA, and I believe it was Kit Green, who then was actually a CIA scientist, if I'm not mistaken. He took that call in Langley, Virginia. And then the rest is history, because the CIA took me out of Israel in 1972, straight to Palo Alto, to Stanford Research Institute, which is today Stanford University, and they started testing me under laboratory control conditions. Some tests were done right there with telepathy. Then there were tests from Langley, Virginia, and it's amazing because that's on my website. There is a documentary by the BBC called The Secret Life of Uri Geller. And you know, you make up your own mind. If you are still skeptical after seeing that documentary, then you have a problem. But so there I was tested. Then I started working for the CIA, and I became extremely controversial. Magicians attacked me. Skeptics attacked me. They said, oh, it's all a sleight of hand, and it's chemicals, and it's all magic. But it wasn't magic. It was real. For me, the controversy was very important, because from one side, the skeptics didn't really understand PR. They didn't understand publicity. The more they spoke about me, the more they publicized me. You know, in the bigger scale of publicity and PR and image making, the name is the important. As long as they spoke about me, as long as they spelled my name correctly, the skeptics, thank you very much. 100 years ago, Oscar Wilde said a very interesting sentence. He said, there's only one worse thing in life than being talked about, and that's not being talked about. So the controversy around me, even until today, exists. And I guess this is where the secret of my longevity lies, because my repertoire is very narrow. I read minds, I fix broken watches, I bend spoons and keys, I move compass needles, and I sprout red radish seeds. That's it. So, you know, I can't believe that how I managed, and I know that I'm kind of showing off now and maybe a little boasting here and there, but how did I manage to instill spoon bending into world culture? If you look at movies like The Matrix with Keanu Reeves and the spoon, there is no spoon, it's your mind that bends. Big bands like Incubus sing about me. George Clooney plays me. Robert De Niro plays me in a movie. So I'm amazed, and I think that's the phenomenon.
You really are. And when you asked if I watched that documentary or read any of that stuff, or for instance, what I paid attention to for a long time, then obviously I wouldn't be interviewing you. It's because I know you do have powers. You do have some powers that even people have used for other reasons. And I know we got into this last time, but later on in your life, for instance, people were flying you to look for oil fields. And again, with that spoon bending, the stage magicians can do it, but then there's only a handful of people who can really do it, and nobody can do
that's exactly so, Dr. J. You said it. I don't know how many people do it for real, how many people do it with magic. We're talking about the spoon bending now. But that developed into totally other areas. And then we'll go back to how it started. But I remember when Senator Claiborne Pell, who was the head of the American Foreign Relations Committee, flew me with Al Gore to Geneva to bombard the Russians to sign the Nuclear Arms Reduction Treaty. And that's a serious kind of meeting there. And they did sign, because I got very close to Yuli Vorontsov and bombarded his mind telepathically to sign. I was tested at the Lawrence Livermore Radiation Labs, where they build nuclear bombs. They wanted basically to see if my mind can trigger a nuclear weapon. I was studied at the American Naval Surface Weapons Center in Maryland. I can go on and on and on. The dozens and dozens and dozens of universities, secret laboratories, and important scientists that tested me. For instance, Dr. Werner von Braun, who was actually a Nazi, who was brought to America because he was a genius in the rocket world. And he became the father of rocket, and he worked out of Goddard Space Laboratory, NASA. And he tested me personally. So there's such a long list of scientists who witnessed it under controlled conditions and said it's real. And from there, it developed into oil finding tunnels in North Korea for the American Army, and so on. But it all started right here in Israel. If I look out of my window, I actually can see the Mediterranean. I can see Tel Aviv perched right under my eyes. It's an amazing place. And flight of a bird, I would say I'm 2 kilometers away from that building, which no longer exists, where I sat in the kitchen, aged 5, eating soup, lifting the spoon towards my mouth, and it suddenly started bending, and it actually broke. I wasn't surprised. I was just kind of said, okay, I guess other kids can do it. But when I went to school and I showed this phenomenon to teachers and pupils, they were shocked and entertained. And then I realized that there is an entertaining value to the real phenomenon of paranormal abilities. And my mother wasn't surprised either, because my mother comes from the Sigmund Freud family in Vienna. And to those who don't know, my name in my British passport is actually Uri Geller Freud. So I'm related to Sigmund Freud, and my mother thought there might be some type of a connection. And then I just simply exercised it by showing off with it. I demonstrated these abilities over and over and over and over, and I sharpened it, I honed it, I exercised it to a point where I can demonstrate it at will whenever I want to.
Let me ask you this question. You said you honed it and you sharpened it. Is it possible for other people on this planet to hone their power and at least have something, or is it just a select few people?
No, I believe everyone has some kind of a paranormal or psychic ability. The reason I dropped the name psychic is because, you know, when you walk on Broadway, 42nd Street, you see these little psychic parlors where, you know, women read your future from a crystal ball and tarot cards and all that. I'm not saying that they're not real, but all these psychic hotlines and so on. I didn't want to be attached to something of that nature, although in the past, decades ago, they asked me to front a psychic hotline and so on. But I think that, no doubt in my mind, that almost all your listeners, almost all of them, would have experienced something telepathic, whether it's a déjà vu, where you went to a place that you've never been before, and suddenly you stop for a second and you say, well, hold on, I've seen this place before. I've been here. What's going on? I've never been here, but I know in my mind that I've seen that building. I've seen this situation. I've seen this person. Or you think about someone that you haven't spoken for a year and they call you that day. You think about your dog. He comes back to you the second you thought about him. I mean, there are hundreds and hundreds of these type of examples that ordinary people experience almost daily. The sharpening of telepathy, you know, it's an exercise. It's like going to school. If you want to be more telepathical, you've got to start doing little experiments with your spouse, with your friends, with your brother or sister, with strangers, with people who work in your office. You draw something, and a very simple drawing, and you transmit it to them. They draw something, they transmit it to you, without seeing, of course. You think of a number, you transmit it. So those are little, I'm describing experimental exercises that one can do, and after a while, let's say if you do this for a year, you will be more telepathical, no doubt in my mind.
I'm glad you brought up telepathy and what we also call it the sixth sense or ESP, because this day and age, 2018, as opposed to say 30 or even 40 years ago, of course people talked about ESP and the sixth sense, but I don't think it was taken as seriously as it is now. It had to take people such as yourself to have verifiable evidence that you do have that sixth sense and you're able to access it. which has gotten people to finally realize that, wait a second, we're not limited to five senses. We actually do have that sixth sense. A lot of people call it their third eye, or activating their third eye, the pineal gland. Meditation is one of the big things a lot of people use to try to hone in on it, or to try to remote view, or have lucid dreaming. Do you meditate daily or anything like that?
Yeah, I do believe also in the third eye. I believe that our bodies are made out of energy. Actually, I don't believe it. It is true scientifically. Let me take you back to 1924 when a very clever man, a scientist, came out with an amazing equation: E equals mc square. Now, of course, most of you will recognize the equation because it was Albert Einstein's. And with this equation, Albert Einstein proved that everything in the universe is made from energy. I'm made for energy. You are, all our listeners, the phone that I'm holding in my hand. Or listen to this. I'm tapping now the table.
Energy. No, no, no.
Because when I tap the phone, it's almost like the phone understands me. Hey, don't tap me. Don't hit me against the table, and he shut it off. So what I try to demonstrate by that even objects that you think are solid, and like chairs and tables and houses, those too are made from energy. And Albert Einstein continued proving that energy cannot be destroyed. So I always say, well, hang on, if energy cannot be destroyed, what happens when we die? Because we are made from energy. We cannot be destroyed. What happens to our soul? What happens to our spirit? I totally and utterly believe in the afterlife. There's no doubt in my mind that there is I'll just call it heaven now, or paradise. But there's no doubt that we go there. Our pets go there. We go there after we finish this life. Now, why did we start talking about energy and the pineal gland and so on? Because our bodies are built from energy lines, energy waves. There are ley lines. You know, I bought an island in Scotland, which is called Lamb Island. It's nothing, big. It's not. You can't live there. And the only reason I bought it is because someone told me that there are ley lines under Lamb Island that go straight to Roslin Chapel, and from Roslin Chapel straight to the pyramids. It's incredible. So everything is energetic out there. We are energy beings. And talking about beings, we talk about UFOs, extraterrestrial beings from outer space. And I know it's kind of out of the box that I suddenly brought up aliens, but no doubt in my mind that we're not alone in the universe. If we were alone in the universe, then what is waste of space? No doubt UFOs visit us. No doubt there are aliens among us. Maybe we are star children. Maybe 2 million years ago a UFO crashed here and we crawled out of the UFO. So, yes, life is such a mystery. It's so mysterious. It's so strange, sometimes bizarre. But having said all this now in one capsule, I'm a believer in God. I believe in God. I think God created us. And my human mind, to my capacity today, is limited because, hey, how much do I know? I'm not a prophet. I'm not a guru. I'm not a healer. I'm just a person that demonstrated certain paranormal abilities.
I'm glad you brought up the ley lines, and of course the fact that we've been visited, and the possibility that we may be star children ourselves, because these are ideas that are finally now being explored. When you talked about ley lines, just the other day we were talking about one that's crossing in America on the East Coast, and there's been a lot of anomalies there. For instance, the guest who was talking about his grandfather's brother was they were both the grandfather and the brother were eating lunch, and one went outside to read a magazine, and then next thing you know he's just disappeared. A couple months later, a photo of him surfaces and his head is gone, just like the movie Back to the Future, if you remember, and when he goes back to 1955. My question to you is, The ley line from the island you purchased in Scotland that goes all the way down to the pyramids. Have you seen any abnormal activity or anything that you would classify as, I guess, paranormal? Because,
Yes,
okay,
absolutely. You know, Dr. J, I don't. First of all, let me explain you where the island is. Actually, it's very close to Edinburgh. It's called Lamb Island. You can Google it. You can just put in Google Uri Geller's Lamb Island. It'll come up. And the Roslin Chapel connection is incredible. But people send me pictures of flying, objects above the island. So there is definitely UFO activity above my island. Whether it's above my island or the area, I don't know. But and by the way, another incredible synchronicity is that you remember the famous book Treasure Island. We all read it when we were children.
yes, yes.
So Stevenson, who wrote the book, he actually lived in North Berwick, which is just off my island. The beach and the little town of North Berwick is just right there. So, and let me tell you how I got to Bide. To those who don't remember the name Muhammad Al-Fayed, if you visited London, then I'm sure some of you went to Harrods, which was one, and is still one of the most famous shopping centers, malls, very, very prestigious, kind of very expensive, and so on. And Muhammad Al-Fayed's son, Dodi, died with Princess Diana in the Mercedes in Paris. And there's a memorial for them in Harrods. And Muhammad Al-Fayed was the one who put me in touch with Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson, I know I'm going wild a little, but to make this story clearer, Michael Jackson came to my show when he was 14 in Los Angeles at the Shrine Auditorium. And I couldn't believe when the usher told me that he was sitting right there. She pointed at the chair. I screamed, "What, Michael Jackson?" And what happened is I ran to the lobby. He wasn't there. He was gone. And the usher told me he was sitting there in the disguise. To cut the story short, I was with Muhammad Al-Fayed in his garden, in his country home, and Michael calls out of the blue. And that's how I got to Michael after decades of him seeing me in Los Angeles. So Dodi was making a movie with Michael Jackson. And Muhammad tells me one day that he has an old book, a 500-year-old book, called the Scoticron, and in it an abbot was telling a story that ancient Egyptians visited Lamb Island. Now, I couldn't believe that because historically and archaeologically and scientifically, archaeologists do not believe that ancient Egyptians, we're talking about 5,000 years ago, ever sailed to North Europe. But they did. And actually, Scotland is called after Queen Scotta, who was the wife of one of the pharaohs. It's really incredible, this whole situation with Lamb Island, and that was the point of me buying it. It wasn't expensive, by the way. Yes, I'm not some kind of a billionaire who can go out and buy islands. It was actually very, very inexpensive, and I thought, my goodness, wow! It was. I can tell you, it was like it was 70,000 pounds, and then the owner heard that I wanted, and I said, no, I'm not going to pay 70. I want to buy it for 30, and he let it go for 30, and that's nothing, and for an island, yes. And I thought, wow, there is synchronicity here. So there is something is happening in Lamb Island, some kind of a ley line that gathers, I don't know, energy, power in Roslin Chapel. And if you remember, Roslin Chapel is Dan Brown's novel, The Da Vinci Codes.
Yes.
And goes straight to the pyramid. So that's the answer.
You ever heard of the island that is no longer here? It disappeared approximately 150 to 200 years ago off the coast of Scotland called Hy Brasil.
No, I've never heard of that. But Was your question about an iron
Island.
island? No, I didn't hear about that. But there are many islands that disappear, and that brings us to the Bermuda Triangle. It brings us to the airplanes that disappeared. It brings us to the ships that were never found, and those stories of vortexes and black holes and UFOs. I'm a huge believer. My scope, my vision into the horizon is enormous. There's nothing I don't believe in, and I think that we should all be open-minded. I don't think we should be skeptics and skeptical about phenomenon that we hear about, and it's hard for us to digest and believe, because the future, everything that we see today in science fiction films, will become a reality in a matter of a few hundreds of years from now. Maybe a few thousands of years from now, we will be able to teleport ourselves. We'll be able to disassemble our bodies, disassemble and reappear and dematerialize and materialize elsewhere. We will be able to speak telepathically. That is if our planet survives, obviously, because we're in great danger. Planet Earth is kind of melting down.
I'm glad you mentioned the power of the mind and us being telepathic in the future, because I truly believe that us humans were meant to be telepathic in general. For instance, we should be able to communicate with, for instance, if an animal's sick, we should know what it's feeling, or if it's sad or happy. And of course, instead of having all these languages across this planet and speaking with our mouths, just like a lot of people purport the extraterrestrials that visit us, or extra dimensional, whatever you want to call them, are telepathic. And the power of the mind is finally getting more understood to be that much more powerful, that we are that much more capable. And I believe it's what we use 10% of it, or 2%, just a handful percent of it. What happens when we unlock the rest? We could have so much more, right?
Absolutely. Look, this also has to do with evolution. As time goes by, our brains expand. We become, definitely more telepathic, definitely more paranormal. We're definitely becoming more psychic. And that's why I'm saying that in the future, people will not talk with their mouths. They will communicate telepathically. And if we do survive on this planet, then let's say 50,000 years from now, our minds, our heads will be huge. We will, it's incredible. We might even be turning into energy beings. It's so hard to kind of predict where the future is taking us, but the reason I bring up our planet, and the reason I'm talking about survival, is because, as we speak, the ice caps are melting. But nevertheless, remember what I'm about to tell you now. Look, our mind power is almost like an iceberg, with 90% lying hidden beneath the surface. Hidden, but it's still there, and it's awesomely massive. And I call this hidden 90% of our mind power the subconscious. And the subconscious is like the subcontinent of Alexander's days. Visualize that. Almost like a vast treasure house waiting to be explored and utilized. And to most of us, our subconscious is always listening. It's listening and absorbing. It's soaking up experience, almost like a sponge. So what I'm telling you, to all our listeners now, is talk to your subconscious. Talk to that submerged 90% of your mind. Tell it again and again. Just instruct it. I am strong. I am relaxed. I am happy. Because what you're doing here, this is not telepathic. You are in touch with your subconsciousness. Your subconscious will absorb this message and make it true. Sometimes your subconscious talks back. And when it speaks, you got to listen. That's called intuition. Messages from your subconscious are called instincts, intuitions. psychic gifts. And to all of us, to you listeners, develop your psychic mind power. Listen to your subconscious and use even more of your brain than Albert Einstein. You just said it, Dr. J. You just said we use only 10%. Well, we can use 15%. We can use 20%.
You're absolutely right, and I'm glad you brought up the fact of the subconscious, because the more our subconscious is always controlling our conscious, and if we don't talk to our subconscious from our consciousness, then we're always going to be reacting and not acting. You know what I'm saying? We're always going to be whatever something is. For instance, if someone's driving down the driving in a car, they're not looking at the different colors of the cars, the makes, the models. They're thinking about something else. Their subconscious is literally driving them in a negative way because they're not awake. But like you said, when you talk to your subconscious, you're imprinting ideas, and you're also able to grow it. And I think that's one of the greatest things that goes along with hypnosis now, is to reprogram your subconscious.
Exactly. And let's draw back from all this mysticism and this mysteriousness and the universe and the ley lines, and let's come down to earth. Let's think positive. Today when I do my shows, it's not about spoon bending or telepathy or watch fixing. I try to be a motivator. I try to instill positivity in people. And I always say to everyone, when you wake up in the morning, put yourself in an attitude of gratitude. That's very important. I say to people, whatever you can visualize, you can materialize. Whatever you believe in, you can achieve. There's nothing that you cannot be, do, or have. It's all your mind power can make it happen. You know that this is so important, to be in an attitude of gratitude, because then there is some kind of a joy, some kind of a positive energy overpowers you. And then there are the simple things that I tell people. I tell them, think like this: do it now. I can and I will. I know what I want. You've got to kind of lock on and hold on. And you've got to think positive, think yes, and never take no for an answer, because quitters never win. You know that, Dr. J. Winners never quit. Excuses are for losers. Everything is possible. And step by step, stay steady on the target, and you will make it. You will achieve your goal. You'll get to your target. And we all live in quite turbulent times. No money. We don't know how to buy our next apartment. We don't even know if we'll ever own an apartment. We don't even know how to send our children to college, to university, because the financial situations are terrible. Then there's relationships. Then there is the sickness. So we're living in a kind of a roller coaster. But by thinking positive, you can adjust that. You can feel better. You can be more successful, and that's what I'm about today. I have these secrets that I really reveal people to how to beat setbacks, and I tell everyone, take the blame. You must always accept responsibility, and to make sure things don't go wrong twice, because we all make mistakes in life. I say take heart. Others have endured crueler setbacks. Just think about that. You're grumbling and you have complaints about little things. Well, did you ever pass a hospital and stopped for a moment and looked up in the windows and think, wow, I'm outside the walls of the hospital. I'm not sick. There are people in there lying in beds. Children are sick. So you've got to take heart. And because you have to understand that others are having much greater problems than you are, and those people will triumph, because if they think positive, then they will be successful in whatever turmoil they're going through. Take heed. This setback can tell you what you're doing wrong and how you can do it right. And also take a long, cool look. Step outside yourself and study the situation, almost like a general surveying a map. I hope you agree to all these little tips I'm giving you all. Do you, Dr. J?
Oh, absolutely. And one thing about you is you've been known to be not only a motivational speaker, but every time you speak on radio, in person, on a movie, documentary, everyone gets a positive vibe from you. And what you are saying is to be gracious every day. I always say that because no one promised us a tomorrow. So therefore, when tomorrow comes and you're awake and you're healthy, be happy. And again, what you were talking about, the people that have made worse problems like in hospitals and we're outside of the walls, thankfully, this goes to a saying that I'm sure you know too. I used to complain about my shoes until I met a man with no feet, because there's always someone going to be doing negative, and worse in worse positions than you are, and at the same time, there's always going to be some people above you. But the point is it's all about perception, isn't it? It's what you tell yourself. If you say negative things to yourself, you're going to attract negativity, right?
Yeah, exactly. And also remember this, that you have to be resilient. You need resilience to cope with a blow of each setback. So remember that. Resilient. Be resilient. Also be resourceful. Resourcefulness will create a strategy to beat the setback. Don't forget my words. Also be resolute. Your resolve will carry the strategy to victory. I know I'm sounding almost philosophical, but it's important you absorb what I'm telling you. Be patient. Patience is important. Be patient. Setbacks mean delays, but patience will always conquer. Don't forget that. Also, another thing that I think made my career, so much stronger and powerful and successful is that I was persistent. Be persistent. Persistence will break down other people's objections and opposition. And basically, and remember one last thing, think positive, think positive, think positive, believe in yourselves, and always be confident. And you will see that this program will do something to you. It'll kickstart something so positive, so enormous, especially when you read my article about the 11:11 phenomenon, that you will suddenly start seeing that from today, positive things are coming into your life.
And that's the key thing. There's actually a phrase that I forgot to mention earlier that Nixon used to say, that you're never truly defeated until you quit. That's one. And two major
Yeah.
traits you mentioned, patience and persistence. Without those two, if people are impatient and they're not persistent about what they're trying to achieve or what they're trying to get, they're going to fall flat on their feet. And that's a huge problem in society today. This is why we need more motivational speakers like you. Or, this is even greater, the fact that we now have the ability to have what you say broadcast to more and more people are listening to your show that you were talking about for 22 years that you've been doing every week. Why don't you go ahead and plug that in real quick for everybody?
Yeah, I'm doing a show with Doug Stephan. It's called Good Morning America every Friday, but it moves because I've been doing it for 22 years. I have a kind of a 5 to 10 minute spot. The other thing that people are striving for, and they always email me. I get 300 emails a day. By the way, you can email me too. I try to answer. My email address is on my website, which is urigeller.com, www.urigeller.com, and Uri Geller is spelled Urigeller. People ask me about success. How did I become so successful? How did I wake up my willpower to be successful? Well, I did little kind of things that to me then looked silly, but then it turned out to be very important. Like write down exactly what you want to achieve and word it clearly and make that your target. Then repeat the target over and over. Believe in it. Believe in your target. And always forbid all other ideas to distract you from the target. Remember that. Also use your imagination. Imagine how life will be when you achieve the target. Visualize it, picture it, visualize the details vividly with tastes, sensations, and sounds. You can also create, Dr. J, a movie in your head and watch yourself achieving your aim, hitting the target. Visualize how others will react to you when you have achieved your target. You know, sit it like you're watching a movie. And always important, very important, always speak out clearly. Never mumble. How else can the world hear you? I meet so many kids, so many teenagers who are shy, who are mumbling. I always tell them, speak out clearly. Also, before I go to sleep, I always give a little prayer to God, but before I go to sleep, or before you all go to sleep, run the target words 3 times through your mind. Be your own self-hypnotist. Always believe in yourself, because you have the mind power, and only you can achieve your target. No one else can do it for you. Seize the responsibility and go for it.
I'm glad you mentioned that about self-hypnosis, because I think the only true way to change your subconscious or put positive thoughts in your mind are from your own self. You can go to another hypnotherapist for other reasons, but you're never going to really get the results until you put it in your own mind. And just like you said, Uri, you have to believe it. You have to believe that it's going to happen, that you already have whatever you're looking for. You already have the happiness, or you already have the wife, or whatever you want. You have to believe it. We have about 9 minutes left, so let me try to get through a couple real things real quick. You did mention the BBC documentary. It's called Life Stranger Than Fiction, right? That was the one.
Yes.
Okay.
That was directed by Simon Cowell.
Yes.
So what was your question?
Oh, I was going to ask you about the second documentary, The Secret Life of Uri Geller.
Yeah, well, that was a documentary that the BBC produced, and I was very concerned about that because they found a director called Vikram Jayanti. And Vikram, Vikram, by the way, won an Oscar for a documentary he did about Muhammad Ali. And I was concerned that they'll get to some CIA operatives and they will kind of blow my cover. But that's exactly what happened. Vikram got to CIA people like Kit Green. He spoke to Dr. Hal Puthoff, Russell Targ, people who knew me. And it's so fascinating because there are certain things that are revealed in that, top secret things that I never spoke about and never will, but it came out from the mouths of others. So I urge you to watch that. I think you'll find my website quite fascinating. It's huge. It's maybe a little hard to navigate, but sooner or later you'll find what you're looking for. By the way, all my books, or most of my books, are available on my website absolutely free of charge, no money. You just get to books, click on books, books will open up, and then you can read, you can read my first book, you can read my second book, you can read my third book, you can even read The Secret Life of Uri Geller, all free of charge. So just to finish our conversation, let me tell you a little about my museum. Yes. I found an incredible building in Old Jaffa, which the foundation might be even 1,000 years old. And I'm turning it into the Uri Geller Museum. Now, what is that? People ask me, what are you going to display in it? All the items that will be displayed have to do with me. So, for instance, I worked with Salvador Dali, the great surrealist, in the 70s, and he gave me sculptures as gifts. He even gave me a rock crystal, and I've never spoken about this on radio, and this is the first time, if we have another 5 minutes.
Oh, yeah, we got 6, yeah.
He went into his bedroom and came out with a rock crystal sphere, and he hands it over to me. And he says, this is a gift from me to you. And he says to me then, it belonged to Leonardo da Vinci. So I looked at my brother-in-law and I kind of smiled, and I didn't believe Dali, because come on, you're not going to give me a gift that belonged to Leonardo da Vinci. So I never took that sentence seriously. So I used to display the crystal ball in the corner of my house and there, and then I put it on my Cadillac. I have a Cadillac, by the way, that stood in the Museum of Israel for a year. It's a 1976 Fleetwood Brougham, and I covered it with 2,000 spoons that belong to very famous people, from John Lennon to Elvis Presley to Justin Bieber to Rihanna to Beyonce to Napoleon to Kennedy to Muhammad Ali, and the list goes on and on and on. And then it was also displayed in American museums, in Baltimore, the Visionary Museum of Modern Art, and so on. So I put that crystal sphere as a mascot on the bonnet of the car. Now, listen to this. 3 years ago, I opened the newspaper, The Times. I'm in London, and I read this fascinating story that a Leonardo da Vinci painting was found in an attic. And the painting is called Salvatore Mundi. And I'm shocked because I'm looking at the painting, the picture of the painting in the Times, and it's of Jesus Christ. And Jesus Christ is holding my crystal ball, the crystal sphere that Salvador Dali gave me. He painted that. He used that crystal as a maquette to paint the crystal in Jesus' hand. I freaked out. I ran to Hannah, my wife, and I said, Hannah, look at this. We've got to measure it. So we pulled out a tape. It's exactly the same size. It's exactly that sphere. Then I Googled Salvador Dali crystal ball, and Salvador Dali actually drew his hand, painted his hand, holding a crystal ball. I cannot believe that I own the rock crystal sphere that belonged to Leonardo da Vinci, that was somehow fell in the hands of Salvador Dali, who gave it to me as a gift. So the Cadillac will be in the museum. Things from David Bowie, John Lennon, Michael Jackson, Elvis Presley, the astronaut Edgar Mitchell, who was my mentor. He started my career. There are lots of other people's items will be in the museum. It'll be very eclectic, very amazing. But the last thing I will tell you is that 3 months ago, we found the most incredible discovery in the museum. And I found it through dowsing. I will not reveal to you what it is. I'm asking you to get on my website, click on my museum, scroll down a little, and you will find pictures of what we discovered under the ground. It's basically mind-blowing.
And everybody out there, remember, UriGeller.com is going to be in the website, drjradiolive.com, under the bio. And of course, all you have to remember is the guest's name. It's not that hard. And I do urge everyone to check it out, especially with these free books. I got to say, Uri, you're very, very kind. And that's really good karma that you're giving all these books. We are almost out of time. I just wanted to give you a chance. If you have one final statement for everybody, what would you have to say?
My final statement to all your listeners worldwide, in America and worldwide, is this. Listen carefully. I love you. I send you tons of positive energy. I give you a big hug and a big kiss all the way from Old Jaffa. And through this program, I'm also sending a big hug and a big kiss to our two granddaughters, Romy and Leah, who are in Los Angeles. I love you all. God bless you all. And thank you, Dr. J, for inviting me onto your show.
It's always a pleasure, Uri, and we'll have to do this again because you are one of the most requested guests. Real quick, everybody, let me thank the people. Late Night in the Midlands, we have Katie and Daryl Neely, who do a lot of work behind the scenes as the station managers. Also, Michael Vara, who runs it. Black Swamp Radio is run by Wise Frog. And in the United Kingdom, Deprogrammed Radio. And remember, if you're listening to Deprogrammed or Late Night in the Midlands, do check their site for the local terrestrial stations. For me, DRJ Radio Live, the name of the show, Dr. J Radio Live, folks. That's all you have to remember. That's the website, drjradiolive.com. That's the same account from Minds, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Flickr, Tumblr, YouTube, Google, Buffer, and anything else you could think of. With that being said, folks, we hope you truly had an enjoyable time as much as I did, and we hope you get these positive thoughts and wake up tomorrow even happier and gracious that you have another day. With that being said, folks, this is Dr. J, and I am officially signing off.